and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. Let's meet the panel.
I'm Dan.
I'm Charlie.
And I'm Josh. It just came to my attention that we are the three senior people on the show. Yep.
Well, that's right. We are.
Charlie and I
Hi.
have both been here since season 1. Dan started in season 2. Combined, we have put together 41 seasons.
How many episodes?
I can't come up with that number off the top of
We're
my
English
head.
majors, not math majors.
I think that it would be it'd be worth doing research. I know that I can crunch my numbers right now because this is episode 394. I did not take part in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You take 5 away from that, and then I didn't.
Math is hard.
I took part in 388 discussions.
What's the square root of a vacuum cleaner? Never mind, we're going to move on.
Okay. We are going to be going over the second book in a series of unfortunate events by Lemony Snicket, and that is The Reptile Room.
A book.
After reading The Bad Beginning and thoroughly enjoying it, making my way through the series was only obvious. My discussion starter for this is, in the second book in a series of unfortunate events, the Baudelaire orphans are adopted by a distant relative in Montgomery, who would affectionately be referred to as Uncle Monty. They would be drawn into a potential adventure connected to Uncle Monty's work with snakes that would lead them on a trip to Peru. But of course, the Baudelaire's fortune was not bound to last for long. My discussion starter is, do you find the adults to be believable in this book?
Ooh, that's a tough one.
Alright, so I actually have a pretty good answer to this. Do you mind if I go first?
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Okay, so
No, just kidding.
the way with this series of unfortunate events is in the beginning, I find them, the adults to be believable. Like, the thing is they probably won't believe the Baudelaires because, they'll be like, oh, you had a horrible time with this guy. I think you should probably just hallucinating that he's always there. But, later on in the series, I felt like it became kind of like a trope, the thing is, what he looks like. The thing is, how are you falling for this disguise? So, if we're just talking about the second book, it's believable. So, at this point in time, I say it's believable that someone might not believe them, about them saying it's kind of all off and stuff like that, because they kind of seem to dismiss it.
I think that the most believable adult, the most believable living adult, is Justice Strauss from The Bad Beginning.
Yeah.
The reason that she couldn't be their parent is because, according to the will, it had to be a relative, and she was not related.
Yes.
However, I think that at this point, especially Mr. Poe he's such an underachiever in my mind.
Yeah, he's really not.
He was more of the comic relief.
Yeah, kind of more like a comic relief.
I wouldn't even consider him comic relief. I think that Uncle Monty was a bit jolly and comical.
But they liked living with him.
Yeah, he was.
For the time.
Uncle Monty was great. He was a little bit oblivious with this Stefano.
Yeah.
But
well, here's the thing: is I think what Lemony Snicket is trying to say, because we're seeing this from the Baudelaire orphans kind of view a little bit, and sometimes kids see adults as kind of idiots. They don't understand what they're trying to tell them, So I think if you kind of see that view, so what I'm saying is there's also the point of view that maybe we're trying to see from the Baudelaire orphans.
But at the same time, they had to go through a lot. I mean, one of the things that I like within this piece is Violet and Klaus, even Sonny, they have something to contribute. Yeah. Each of them has a strength of theirs. Mm-hmm. Violet with her interest in inventing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Klaus with his interest in reading. And Sonny likes to bite things.
Yes.
Yeah.
They are able to come together and make something happen in order to take down the antagonizing forces. In this case, it pertains to Count Olaf. To me, he and his hook-handed assistant should have never been able to get away. And the fact that Mr. Poe responds by saying, and I quote, "A grown man does not get involved in a car chase. This is a job for the police. I'll go call him now and maybe they can set up some roadblocks. This is a killer. This is a killer who is an ongoing threat to kids that you are supposed to be looking after.
Right.
Yeah. I think it's basically he only cares about the Baudelaires until he leaves them with a guardian, and after that he kind of doesn't really care.
There's that, and there's the fact he doesn't care for them enough. He only cares for them when it's convenient for him.
Right.
Because he doesn't even make an appearance until he drives to bring their stuff, and by that time Uncle Monty's been killed.
With regards to, are these adults believable? Yes and no. How original. But no, I'm going to say, with Mr. Poe, he was, and of course, as some of you may or may not know, this is a subject of spoilers. So, Mr. Poe, what did he do? What was his profession? He worked.
He's a banker.
He's a banker.
Banker,
I mean, this was before the cell phones and all that. But bankers, what are you working with? Money. You're
Money.
working with money. If you're dealing with 3 children, and then but money. Well, I mean, to Mr. Poe, I think the money is a little bit more. I think he sees the kids as somewhat of an inconvenience.
That's exactly why Count Olaf wants to adopt them as his own, because he wants to kill them all. He wants to marry Violet because he knows that she's going to
4 years. She's
inherit.
18.
Inherit the estate, kill off the others,
He's waiting,
and then kill off her, and then just take the money for himself.
Yeah, well, you're right. No.
I wouldn't say Mr. Poe doesn't really care to get their money. He's just very lackluster.
Well, no, yeah, that's what I wanted to say. He seems almost doesn't sputtering like his car.
Yeah.
I mean, he always coughed into a handkerchief. First of all, that's just you don't do that.
I mean, I'm just saying. I really don't care so much about him coughing to a handkerchief. I know.
It's more so the fact I can see that as
it's more so the fact that these kids at least deserve a fair shake at something better, and yet
they don't have a father figure. Is what I'm trying to say. Mr. Poe didn't seem like the father figure. He was always telling them, "Oh, don't talk," like things like always correcting them.
He's a family friend, so he couldn't be their guardian by the means of the will. Right. However,
it's not
I don't think the parents would have wanted them to be in the situation, in a cruel situation of this nature. But Uncle Monty,
I'm just kidding. I think he was phenomenal. I think he was real.
I think he was a bit oblivious when Stefano came with them, and the fact that Stefano is threatening him with a knife when no one's looking is just, to me, is
there anything there?
I know that as the story progresses, they're going to get engaged in even more unfortunate events just for the sake of what it is.
Well, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, and it's targeted toward younger audiences.
Like
so
me!
They can be a bit more trivial in that matter, but the question's going to be, are they just unfortunate events, or is it going to become torture porn?
It does not get like that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it does get pretty dark in some parts, but I wouldn't say like torture porn.
This has earned my interest to the point that I'm going to keep going. Because even outside of how tropey the unfortunate events and the oblivious adults get, I'm still intrigued and I admire the Baudelaire Orphans.
Yes.
Oh yeah, the story is amazing from what I first of all, I mentioned I've only read the first 10 books. I never got to read 11, 12, and 13 because they came out sometime after. First 10 that I read, when I started reading the series, the thing is, like, I thought they were really great, you know?
And I'm engaged.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Josh! I'm proud of you.
I can understand the thing is, the adults do seem somewhat unbelievable in some parts, but in some parts it's kind of believable because, these kids have been through a traumatic event. You think that, okay, maybe they're just having hallucinations. And the thing is, I think that's believable in this part of the story.
I can agree with that.
Yeah. The book copy that you got here, I got the Bad Beginning like this, only in paperback. I was engaged enough in the first book that I got
the second.
I got the box set of all 13.
Of course, yeah.
This is part of that box set.
I mean, I'm just gonna be Mr. Captain Obvious here. I mean, no child should ever have to go through, especially Sunny, who's the youngest. She's an infant, right? She's what? I don't think they established.
She's a toddler.
Toddler. So she's what, like 4? We'll say she's 5 years old.
No. She's like
maybe a year and a half.
1, maybe 2.
Okay.
Maybe 2.
I always
get 2 would be as old as she's T then.
She's alright. So
and she can walk.
Yeah. So there
and
you
she
go.
can't speak.
Neither can I really.
Babble, but I mean, she can't really say words.
Yeah.
Basically.
But what I also found interesting too, I'm glad you brought that up. But I like how when she came out with a word that was not really a word, just babble, she was in conjunction with what the 2 others were saying, Violet and Klaus. They would always seem to agree. So even though she was speaking nonsense, I guess you can just flat out call it, they always seem to understand. Okay, we're the 18. We know what we're talking about. We get it.
Yeah, Lemony Snicket was good at melding that together.
Yeah. I'm loving actually how we were so consistent with it.
And what were everybody's thoughts about the Reptile Room itself?
It actually sounds pretty cool because I love reptiles, like lizards and snakes and that stuff. I would like to live in a house like that. Like, I would like to have a room like that full of reptiles. That would be kind of cool to me.
Here's my question. Whatever I'm reading, I try to, if it's about something exactly like this, and I want haunted buildings and stuff like that, I try to picture what it would look like. Where was this reptile room per se in the house? Is it like just
I was imagining
and
like
off to the left?
like, kind of like this room, but instead of books, it was like reptiles.
Yeah. And what I'm trying to get at is like off to the left is the kitchen, off to the right is the living room, and if you go further a little bit and push the secret button, there's a reptile room, and next door there's the billiard hall. I mean, it's just like right out there in the open.
It was
I try to picture that. I picture it in my mind.
Well, his profession was like kind of something with reptiles.
He studied snakes.
Yeah, it's like it makes sense that he would have reptiles.
I want to say, I don't know if I'm the herpetologist or something.
I don't know what I forgot what the term of it was.
He does make mention to the title. Oh,
yeah,
herpetologist.
Yeah. And
he studies snakes.
Yeah. And I think for how long? 40 years? I mean, that's a substantial amount of time, you know?
It's a shame that he went down the way he did.
Yeah.
From what it says on the back of the book, it seemed like it was a car accident. It was very interesting, the things that they make mention to. You would think that they would apply to another event. I thought the car accident was what killed him. That was what Stefano got into when he was making his way to Peru.
Yeah.
Which, at that point, they were reluctant. Uncle Monty ripped up his ticket and denied him access.
He had his doubts.
Yeah, not because he felt he was a physical threat, but because he was a threat to his career. He didn't want Stefano to intercept his...
I've actually found that a little bit funny, which I kind of like the humor in these books. Like, Uncle Monty believes that Stefano's a threat, but not to the Baudelaires, like, like Olaf. He thinks it's a threat to his career, because I think, like, he mentions he thinks like he's a spy or something like that from like the scientific division or something like that. I was like, oh, okay, he believes the bad guy, but for a different reason. I was like, okay, that's kind of funny. But at least he's on his side, on the Baudelaire side, to say.
Yeah, but it was obvious that he was Count Olaf the moment that he came out of that taxi.
Well, I mean, us the readers know that, but you know, the characters in the well, besides the Baudelaires, are supposed to kind of be oblivious to who this is.
Yeah, Dr. Egmont
had the.
I think that you had a feel. I mean, I didn't get it immediately, but after gathering enough together, I think you had a sense that
I was starting
because he was very.
They kept mentioning about how his hands are very stiff, and this character had two hands that were hooks.
And he was very inconsistent or he was very peculiar as far as his actions were concerned. They favored Stefano / Count Olaf. I thought it was the fact that he used makeup to take it. I think that was what they saw, because initially he didn't use the makeup. He cut his hair and he shaved or
grew a beard.
Grew a beard, yes.
Shaved an eyelash.
Shaved the eyebrow. That's what he did.
I mean, if I'm looking at it this way. And again, this is what I'm saying about Mr. Poe being the comic relief. He's too oblivious to realize maybe these kids are actually bleeping right. Yes, I'm bleeping out now.
He knew that Count Olaf was a threat, but he didn't see Stefano.
He didn't see it like he's like two different people, but the kids who have been through traumatic experiences, multiple ones, series of unfortunate events, it messes with the head, okay? These kids have been through a lot. You know, the house burned down, your parents die, you're going to start maybe questioning things at a younger age. And what I'm trying to really say here is they're trusting their guts a lot more than, you know, your average kid. From what I'm assuming, they would trust their gut a lot more.
And you have the deadly viper as well.
Yeah.
Which was not that deadly.
No.
Uncle Monty just named it that because he made the discovery. He thought that it would be good. Prank.
He was
good. Olaf kind of made it seem like, you know, the death was based on the snake.
Yeah, he tied together, but he didn't
realize it.
Yeah,
he realized the thing. It's not really that deadly of a snake.
And the suitcase too. That held everything, all the evidence.
Yeah, it was the makeup and powder.
And he had wine for lunch every was it every day? Did I read that right? He had wine for lunch or something like that because I know he was drinking.
So like he had wine with his lunch, just basically. Yeah. You know, Count Olaf was kind of like always like fancy stuff like that. So I think.
Do we have any final thoughts?
I like it. Like I've read it before, so it's a good way to reread it again. I like the series from the very beginning, so I say it's very good. If somebody wants to read it.
Highly recommended. I personally, if you know somebody who is reluctant to read, I put this in their hands. I put a lot of things in people's hands, like that I would recommend. But
I read it when I was like 10, which is at the time of my life I hated reading.
If you have someone that you know if you may be reluctant to read, I'd start maybe with this because
Well,
I think they made
maybe
this,
book 1 first.
Well, yeah, but,
Yeah,
I think
read in order.
Read in order. Don't start from 3-1 to 2.
Very good,
Great
very
read.
engaging. The only concern that I have is that I have that sense that it could go down that tropey direction where the unfortunate events themselves, they're just being placed there so that unfortunate events can be had. It's kind of like if you remember the first so many seasons of Sesame Street where Snuffy was Big Bird's imaginary friend. It got to the point where...
God, that was like long ago.
It got to the point where there were the reasons that Snuffy couldn't be seen from by the adults. It was becoming so unbelievable they just had to pull him out of their rear ends. To the point that, I mean, the real reason was because there was kids didn't feel that their parents, guardians, and adult figures could believe them, so that's why they made him seen by the adults. But either which way, it got to the point where they were running out of ideas, and it was becoming so ridiculous. And hopefully how it happens here, they're not making things unfortunate just because that's what they have to do. If you're able to make them unfortunate in the way that it flows well and adds up, that's one thing.
Yeah.
But not just to torture the boulders.
Not to spoil anything, but the thing is, in the later books, we do discover that there's more to this than just just unfortunate events. Like, there's a whole conspiracy around what's going on in the book world.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of that mystery there, the things that perhaps Count Olaf isn't working alone. I mean, besides, with this acting troupe, there's pretty much more to this than what we know.
Oh, okay. I'll be inclined to read the rest of this, but how do we want to rate this? 0 to 5 stars, half stars permitted. Dan?
Can't afford. It's a very solid book, very good read. And the adults were a little bit unbelievable, so that's why I take a star off. But other than that, 4. Really good.
I'm giving it a 5. Loved it. Couldn't put it down. Read it in 2 days. I mean, yeah, it's a fast read, but I read it I couldn't stop reading it. I would definitely recommend this series to people who are reluctant to read.
And I'm going to give it a 4.5 because I was very engaged and still had that great sense of interest in the series and in the adventures and obstacles that the Baudelaires had to deal with, as for the reasons that I mentioned, and the fact that it could go down a tropey,
But I gotta say,
intentional path.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to say what these kids have is resilience. They have that ability to come back from one thing after another.
That's the way they have to do it.
I know, but I'm just saying, in real life, some people may not have that resilience. Most people do, so may not, I don't know.
For the reasons as I mentioned is why I give it the rating that I did. If anybody's interested in reading this and the other 12 books, here is my copy of...
Mine's from the library.
The Reptile Room. This is book the 2nd of the series of unfortunate events.
So is this one.
Yes, it is. It's just a different
I
copy.
know. I love meatballs.
Alrighty then. Be sure to join us next time on another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.
Bye.
Hi there, this is Josh, and on the next episode of Literary Gladiators, Larry, Charlie, and I will be discussing The Street of Crocodiles, the short story by Bruno Scholz. If you like what you see on our channel, please support us on our Patreon, for the money that we make will allow us to provide you, the viewer, with even more great content. For now, and as always, we encourage you to keep reading.